All right, everybody. I'm going to do a quick Guppy 101 and breeding do's and don'ts. Now, everybody keep in mind, this is my experience over years and years of breeding. Not necessarily always the right view or political view or whatever view you want. But anyway, here's what we're going to cover. A male versus female, pregnant and how long, tank size, filter, substrate, cover versus breeder boxes, tank mates, and when to separate coals and how to make money. So anyway, let's get on to here. First thing you need to know about Policii reticulata. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Look on the left picture. You're going to know some male versus a female. The females are more well-rounded on the bottom, obviously, and the male on the top has a gonopodium. Now, those are not guppies, obviously. On the right side, they're endlers. Typically with guppies, the males are usually going to be more brightly colored than the females. Okay, so we'll go from there. It's not always the case, but it usually is. So let's go to here we go. Guppies can interbreed only with members of the Policii family. The only two that I'm aware of is mollies and endlers. I know guppies can breed with mollies and vice versa. But with mollies, they're almost always sterile, so no other breeding can occur. With endlers, it's basically a reverse guppy. They can breed freely. There's no no problems at all with that. So if you're trying to create some oddball species, mix and match with endlers. All right. Now, guppies are pretty prolific. All right. In my experience, that's where we're going to all this. I believe females can become impregnated as soon as 4 weeks. Typically, a virgin female, 12 to 16 weeks to give birth. Okay. After that, in my experience, females will generally produce every 28 to 32 days normally. And there'll be other things that tell you 21 to 30 days, whatever. It's not my experience. Now, here's the key on the bottom. If you're trying to breed guppies that are, you want to, try to work out, genetics and all that, um, they will store sperm for up to 8 months. 6 to 8 months, in my experience. They don't need a male at all during that time. So in other words, you can put a female by herself as long as she's been hit by a male, or well, probably multiple males. They will store, each individual sperm packet for up to that long. And there's some disclaimers on there. I know that, and not to take away from him, Corey from Aquarium Co-op at one point stated that, they're pregnant for a lifetime. Well, if that was true, you really would not be able to get genetics and crossbreeding and everything else. I've talked to a bunch of people. We're kind of looking, somewhere about the, 6 to 8 month mark. Okay. But go with 6 to be safe. One experiment you can do, put a female, your master female in one aquarium, let her give birth, throw her in another master aquarium, let her give birth as long as no males are present, and I'm pretty sure you'll see that that's what's going to happen. All right. The best combo obviously is one male to two females, or 2 to 4 per 5 gallons, in my experience. Only if you're trying to breed, obviously. You can say overstocked all day long. If any of y'all been with me any length of time, you'll know some of my 20-gallon aquariums have 100 guppies in there. As long as you keep it filtrated, you got plenty of live plants, blah blah blah, plenty of filtration, air moving in there, sponges, you know, um, you've also got to keep in mind the bacteria on your substrate. So don't hold me as an example, okay? You do you, okay? And we're gonna assume that you're running cycle tanks 30 plus days. Man, in the beginning, I would cycle tanks for 3 months, okay, using ammonia, um, and just dropping it in there and then measuring, weekly, the, amount of progress I got. Um, so we're not talking about little Jimmy's tank that, you bought a tank yesterday and you put it on a stand and threw water in there. That's not going to work, people, for the most part. I mean, don't make them suffer. Okay. Um, anyway, um, so just learn cycling and look it up. There's 1,000 places to look it up. Aquarium Co-op or me or someone else. Now, if you have multiple tanks running, the best thing you can do, throw a sponge filter in one of them, let it sit there for 3 months. Bam, you can pull that out, throw it in a tank, and you're almost instant cycled at that point. I wouldn't go as far as that, but that works. Okay. Um, cycle, cycle, cycle. I can't tell you. Just keep going with your cycling. The longer you cycle a tank, the better. Um, to me, and this works for me, not you all. I don't like hang on the back filters for a lot of reasons. Okay. Um, One is they don't put air in the tank. And is it necessary with guppies? I don't think so. I really don't. But does it help? Sure. Yeah, it definitely helps. It breaks the surface tension and blah blah blah. They're cheap, and the good thing is when your electric goes out, your sponge filter is still got the bacteria and everything in there. You got to hang on the back filter. Your electric goes out. Guess what? You don't have water pouring over top of you know, whatever you've got in the filter, whether it's excuse me, oogly miggly, whatever you could have filter in there. You could have I don't know, the little stones. You could have whatever in there, but if you don't have water running over there, that's not really helping. Um, as far as your substrate goes, don't put a lot of money into it, people. If you're just trying to breed, you can buy play sand for $5, man, for 20 pounds, at your local Home Depots, Lowe's, whatever. I do have a video on how to clean it. You definitely want to clean it. Don't ever throw it straight in a tank. Did it once, horrible mess. Took days and days and days for it to settle. All right, but play sand is just fine. Obviously, do you? If you're wanting a show tank, you're probably going to want to have river rock or, whatever substrate it is that you're going to use, And if you got a neon tank with a glow tetras or whatever, you might want to have some of that neon glowing rock. I don't know, whatever. Um, Now tank size. Now I'm always talking about breeding, not necessarily showing. Um, at least have a bunch of 20s. Have an overflow of a 29-gallon or two. And what I mean by overflow, eventually you're going to have deformities. You're going to have, you know, too many of this or that. But anyway, any of my fish that does not cut muster on a tank, it goes into a 29 master tank. Matter of fact, I'm working on getting another 29 as we speak, for another coal tank. We'll talk about coals later on. And obviously, you want a bunch of 10 gallons. It's a little tricky with the 10 gallons, and here's the reason why. If you're not in a heated fish room where one heater is taking care of everything, each individual tank that you got, you're looking at a heater. Okay. So if you got 4 tanks, you got 4 heaters. You got 4 tanks, you got 4 sponge filters. Not a big deal because you're running the pump. But keep in mind on that, and that's one thing I didn't think about. I think a great tank is simply a 20-gallon tank, whether it's a high or long, because they hold a lot of fish. They hold a lot of uh, plants. You can easily, after you know what you're doing, keep 100+ guppies in them. Or 10-gallon tanks, I've kept up to maybe 30, 40, 50 guppies at times. Now, I'm not talking about if they're getting 2.5 inches long. Guppy size varies a lot, obviously. So anyway, we'll go from there. But I think a 20 is the best all-around tank um, for individual species. That's my opinion. Whatever. All right. Just a quick picture of you know my earlier days, if you will. But you notice the plant growth in there. That's what you want. And you notice on the far right, where I'm moving my mouse, I assume you can see it. It's an empty sponge filter. Um, that currently has been in there probably about 2 or 3 months. Now that's a large sponge filter, mind you. You can get them small, medium, large. But once I take that and throw it in another 20, it's almost instant cycle. Because what's going to happen, the bacteria from there is going to get into the substrate, which is below. You can kind of see the play sand maybe right there. So it's going to slowly get into there. It's going to slowly work its way into the plants. Now, beneficial bacteria, everybody, it is not free swimming. It will not. You cannot take water from another tank and throw it into a new tank and say I'm cycled. No, does not work. Bacteria only lives on the glass, the filters, surfaces. Okay, it is not free swimming. So get that out of your heads right now. If that's what you think you're going to do, that's not going to work. I had a little bit of an algae problem there, since taken care of, kind of. All right. Um, Plenty of cover, yada yada yada. Cycling 3 months. Blah blah blah. Well, I've already covered all this. I'm not going to stay on this page much at all. Um, the only added benefit about having a coal tank, for bit spines, or maybe your red Russians, one of them through a female that has a purplish tail instead of a red tail. You never know what you're going to get with her. You might want to put her, in the other tank, and you never ever know what you're going to come up with. I've had a couple of people say, is if you put every guppy in one tank, is all you're ever going to do is get mutton guppies like you see at feeder fry. I don't believe that for a second. Um, you're just going to get mixed colors, because they were all purebred at one point. So anyway, trying to wrap this up. I'm a huge, huge believer on not using breeder boxes. I'm not even sure there was any fish in here other than snails. Look at that cover. There's rock, there's java moss, plenty of places for them to hide. The reason I'm against breeder boxes is it stresses the female out. Now, here's what I would say. You put the female in here, you put your little breeder box up here, you net out your fry if you feel like you have to, put them in the box, not the female. It just stresses them. Now, I do, fry are unbelievable in their instincts to survive. I have sit there and watched multiple tanks over many years, and people, adult guppies can't catch the fry like you think they can. Fry are pretty quick. They want to survive like anything else, and fry are left on their own, just like sharks or like other things. They're not like cats or dogs or humans that have to wean their young. They are born that second knowing I'm gonna be food if I don't hide. It's that simple. Okay, so anything like this is going to cover them. The only thing I will admit, other than that, I can understand putting a bunch of breeder boxes in there if you're trying to separate out traits. So let's say that you don't have 4 20-gallon tanks, you've only got one, and this one is colored up and has a black on the tail, and this one has blue on the tail, and maybe you want to separate them to try breeding experiments. You're still going to need more tanks anyway, so just stay away from those. I believe this is the last slide. Anyway, um, my opinion is ram's horn snails, many other snails are very, very beneficial to have. for the simple fact that they clean up leftover messes. They don't eat live plants. They will eat dead matter. And if you have a fish die that you can't see, they will clean them up. But ram's horn snails are fine. Pond snails are fine, although a lot of people don't like them. Malaysian trumpet snails are really good if you have sand, to kind of dig in and turn the sand, if you will, to prevent air pockets that I've never really seen before, having issues. But um, lots of snails are good to have. I mean, I could go on and on. So anyway, snails are great. You want to have them. If you see snails overpopulating people, I've done a video on this before, it's because you are overfeeding. Snails are a great way to know how much you're feeding your fish. So if you had these two right here, and all of a sudden, a week from now, you've got 20, and a week from there, you've got 60, you're overfeeding. What you do is you cut back on the feed some, they will naturally die off. Now, I love these things. They actually sell for quite a bit. Um, Honestly, people want them. So, anyway, um, freshwater shrimp. I've not really had great success with them as far as breeding because I have extremely hard water. Um, and typically, I think they do better in a lower hardness. Um, and around a pH. If you're talking about neocaridina, which is your typical, you know, uh, what do you call them? Now I'm going blank. Your typical freshwater shrimp that you find at the local store. I'm not talking about caridina, those species, which require lower pH, but um, your red shrimp and whatever else you find, typically they're fine. I don't really see guppies picking on them. Catfish are fine, period. Cories, bristle noses. I wouldn't get into plecos. I'm talking about common type plecos and all that stuff where they get huge. I'm not, I don't have a lot of experience with Siamese algae eaters or any of that type. I don't believe that they would be any issue, but I know bristle noses are fine and cories are fine. Um, and really, that's about the extent of it. Um, the last thing I would say, um, if you're trying to breed guppies, keep guppies by themselves. I mean, it's one thing if you got a show tank and you're putting guppies and tetras and this and that. Really, if you're trying to breed a specific species, let's say a purple Moscow or blue Moscow or black Moscow or, blue metalhead or whatever, it's best to keep them alone with maybe a few catfish in there. That's fine. And snails are fine. But don't, you know, try to go hog crazy and, put zebradanios and, tetras and all that stuff in there. Last thing I'm gonna say, excuse me, my goodness. Um, if you get overstocked on them, you know, your big box stores will not buy them. Okay, so let's say that all of a sudden you've got 1,000 in a 20-gallon. Um, that's probably not going to support that very long. Odds of you getting there if you're selling them regularly is probably not too bad. Um, but if you're getting overstocked and you don't have overflow tanks like other 29s or an extra tank, to put your overstock into, at that point, do a huge discount on them if they're purebred that people will buy. eBay, Aquabid, Facebook, local groups, your um, local fish breeding or fish charter, if you will, or whatever. But Petco, Feeder Supply, all that crap, they're not going to touch them. Walmart's, whatever. Um, I have talked to a couple mom and pop stores around Louisville, and they are happy to take excessive guppies. But here's what they're going to do with them. Be real honest. They're just going to put them out there in their feeder tank and basically sell them off as feeders. They're not. They probably won't even quarantine them. That's all they're going to do with them, even if they're beautiful and 2 inches long. So please plan this out way in advance. Have options. I have certain guppies that I like my red Russian snake skins. I think they're beautiful. No one's buying them. Now I've got probably 100 in a tank. So I don't know what my long-term plan is is for that, other than to offer a very steep discount, and try to sell them as quick as I can to lower the population. Worst case, I can't keep putting them in my coal tanks. Worst case, some of them are just gonna have to be, I don't know, shipped off to the pet store and become whatever they become. Now, keep in mind, most pet stores are probably not going to give you any credit. You know, you can say, if I bring them in there for free, will you take them? Some of them will even say, no, we don't want them. We got enough as they are. But make sure you call, Joe's Pet Shop or, Mark's Feed Store or whatever you got, available, and have backup plans. So I've got 2 people I can work with when I get overpopulated, or have extra tanks. Anyway, this is going to be the end of it. Thanks for staying. That's breeding 101, as easy as it gets. All right, laters.